My name is Kaylee, and in this video we are going to take a look into what life was like during the Mesolithic in Europe. You know, when the climate changed and new ways of survival were needed to be developed. But, first things first, what even is the Mesolithic? Well, the Mesolithic is a time period in the Stone Age that came after the Paleolithic, the old Stone Age, and it came before the Neolithic, the new Stone Age. So it's also referred to as the Middle Stone Age. This time period, the Mesolithic, is characterized by climate change after the last ice age came to an end and we entered a warmer interglacial period. Although the Mesolithic started and ended not at the same time globally. It's more so that we see a gradual change from the Old Stone Age into the Middle Stone Age at different points in time for different locations. Just like the Neolithic also doesn't start at the exact same time globally. But in this video, we will simply look at the Mesolithic period in Europe, which started at the earliest around 15,000 years ago and it ended around 5,500 years ago. What are some of these characteristics of the Mesolithic time period in Europe? And how did this affect the way the people lived back then? So like I mentioned just now, it didn't start exactly at the same point everywhere. In Eastern Europe, it started around 15,000 years ago, but in general in Europe, after the Younger Dryas came to an end, the climate started to warm and the tundra started to change into forests, which, as you can imagine, resulted in the changing of food supply and living environment for the people in Europe. So the herds of large animals like woolly mammoths and woolly rhinoceros moved away from this changing landscape as they followed the colder climate northeast to where the tundra remained. And in the new forests that started growing, new animals started to inhabit these areas. The massive beasts were roaming these areas no more, and in their place came deer and wild boars, which led to the humans needing to change their hunting strategies. So instead of their large weapons to hunt large game, they needed smaller weapons. So one of the very distinctive features of the Mesolithic period is the use of the microliths, which are stone tools smaller than 5 centimeters that were used in composite tools. As you can see, this is an example of microliths. So the people started to change their nomadic lifestyle and started to build their settlements near seas or lakes, which ensured an abundance of food. They were able to fish, hunt birds, gather small animals way more easier this way. So the people living in Mesolithic Europe also started to gather fruits and nuts that these forests brought with them. In fact, hazelnuts became a significant contributor to the diet of the people living in Mesolithic Europe, and it's possible that the hazelnut may have been the very first cultivated plant here in Europe. An ancient piece of chewed gum made from the pitch of birch bark revealed that people in the Mesolithic enjoyed a meal of hazelnuts and duck. And this piece of chewed gum dates back to 5,700 years ago and it was discovered in Denmark. There are actually indications that the people in Mesolithic Europe were possibly already building structures with ritualistic or astronomical significance. Like for instance, the wooden post holes found at the car park in Stonehenge that date to approximately 9,000 years ago, showing that people were already building structures at the same location as Stonehenge was built thousands of years later. And there's also a possible lunar calendar found at Warrenfield in Scotland, dating back to also approximately 9,000 years ago, as pits of post holes varying in sizes were found here, which is thought to reflect the lunar phases. But most structures from this time period were small settlements. Some of these were semi-permanent dwellings, while others were just simple wind shelters, most likely used during certain seasons. Lots of post holes left by the structures of these settlements have been found all over Europe. Some of these semi-permanent dwellings even had floors made from birch bark and logs. Unfortunately, relatively few artworks from the Mesolithic period in Europe have been preserved. There are some rock carvings in the Iberian Mediterranean region and the Ural Mountains, and there are some pendants, wooden artifacts, and small animal sculptures that have been found. But comparing these findings to the Paleolithic and the Neolithic, there's really not much left of their artistic expressions. However, there has been quite a discovery at Starcar in the United Kingdom, where archaeologists discovered 33 red deer skulls that were modified to be worn by humans. Similar modified animal skulls have been discovered at other locations as well. In some of the regions here in Europe, young twigs and grasses were used to make shoes as well as baskets. So it seems that weaving techniques were already being applied in the early Mesolithic period, as there have been several of these woven baskets found in, for instance, southern Spain, dating back to approximately 10,000 years ago. In the northeast of Europe and parts of southern Europe, there has been a period of ceramic Mesolithic between 9500 and 7500 BCE, where hunter-gatherers seemed to start create pottery without already engaging in agriculture. This most likely began around Lake Baikal in Siberia and slowly spread to other cultures like the Dnipro-Donetsk culture in Ukraine and Russia, the Narva culture around the Baltic Sea, the Ertebølle culture in Denmark, and the Swifterbond culture in the Low Countries of Germany, Belgium, and of course, the Netherlands. I mean, come on, the Netherlands are awesome. I'm Dutch, I can say it. You can come for me in the comments, but I just have to say that, Mesolithic Netherlands, even though it didn't exist back then, is awesome. So this pottery that these Mesolithic ceramic people created had pointed or knobbed bottoms and flared rims. And due to the similarities of the pottery among all these peoples and cultures, it's most likely that they learned the techniques and adopted the tradition from each other, rather than from the Neolithic communities who were starting to settle around them, which makes this pottery style more of a technological transfer between hunter-gatherers than the early spread of agriculture. So during the Mesolithic, there were various burial practices. The most common method was inhumation, or in other words, the burying of the dead, often in an upright seated position, sometimes extended position where the body laid on its back like we do in modern times, or sometimes in a flexed position where the body had its limbs tightly bent or bound. But while inhumation, the burying of the dead, was the most common method during this time, we have also discovered many cremations from this time period, as well as dismembering, exposing the body to leave for scavengers, excarnation, where all the organs were being removed before burial, and sometimes they even dabbled in a little bit of cannibalism as a form of burial practice. If the head of your tribe dies, you might want to eat its brain to, soak up its knowledge? Ew. So it may be hard for us to understand why they chose to use which method for a specific person back then, but maybe it's simply not for us to know. Most of the burials were filled with grave goods like tools and animal remains, jewelry and ornaments made from bones, animal teeth and shells. And the types and quality of the grave goods, especially when it comes to the graves with, higher quality riches, suggests a hierarchical social structure. The burial was often accompanied by red ochre and may have consisted of a single human, multiple humans, or a collective. And infant burials were often highly decorated. So what most people don't know is that most burials from the Mesolithic and Neolithic are oriented to the cardinal points, often in a north-south or east-west alignment. The east-west alignment with the rising and setting of the sun, the beginning and ending of life. And some of these graves are potentially tied to specific geographical landmarks, which suggests a ritualistic aspect and significance. Sometimes the burial was located in caves, mounds, or specific locations near settlements, often in an isolated location away from the domestic living spaces. So these burial practices show a ritualistic aspect in the way the people living back then dealt with death. Sometimes the body within the grave would also be placed with their heads facing cardinal directions or specific landmarks, or their limbs were being positioned in a deliberate way. While this video focused on life in the Mesolithic in Europe, the Mesolithic was also a time period in other locations, which I will probably focus on in future videos. I mean, if you want to see that, the Mesolithic time period in the Levant area or in Asia, let me know if you want to see that. I just enjoyed looking at the ways the Mesolithic really was the changing point from the Old Stone Age, the Paleolithic, and before we started to dabble in agriculture and animal husbandry of the Neolithic time period. The Mesolithic was a time of big changes, quick development, and humans slowly settling down more permanently. It signifies the end of the nomadic lifestyles for many people living back then in Europe, and it gave way to the agricultural ways of life of the Neolithic and the burial practices with the burial mounds and the dolmens from the Neolithic. It shows to us that the people radically changed their ways of life to accommodate the change in climate and the change in their food supply. So this was just a very quick video on the Mesolithic time period in Europe. So what do you think of the Mesolithic in Europe and how that changed life for hunter-gatherers? Let me know in the comments down below. And I will look at the life of a particular woman from the Mesolithic very soon. I'm working on that video. It's actually a really fun collaboration between me and another YouTuber, which I will not yet name. So, you know, just gave you a little bit of a sprinkle of a hint, but it's fine. As you're seeing this, I will be in Turkey co-hosting the tour, and I won't be around much because I'm probably just making a whole lot of content and having a lot of fun with all the guests. But you know, with that said, if you enjoyed watching this video, then don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you'd like to see more of these kind of videos, and click that bell icon if you want to be notified whenever I upload. If you haven't seen my previous videos yet, then click the card in the upper right corner or click one of the links in the description down below. Or you can click a video in the end card. I would also like to say a massive thank you to my patrons and my channel members. Thank you so much for supporting me. It truly means the world to me. And yeah, like I said, I will be in Turkey when you're watching this, and not in doom, gloom, rainy, grey Netherlands, because we're back to that for the next 7 months, maybe 9, but yeah, it's fine. I will see you in the next video, and I have no idea what it's gonna be yet, because I'm working on multiple videos at the same time. I probably have like ADD or something, because I can't really focus on one thing. I usually work on like 7 scripts at the same time. Yeah, I'm very chaotic. It's not like you guys never noticed that I'm very chaotic. But yeah, with that said, I'll see you in the next video. Okay, bye.